That whole work-life balance, that word, it's like, imagine being on a ball and a teeter. Harmony is like music, like a meal. Sometimes it's a little bit trebles up, bass is down. Sometimes you got a little more spice, and sometimes it's a little bit bland. I always remember there's a popcorn shop in Chicago called Garrett's. And when I first saw or heard about this mix of cheddar and caramel, like, really? That doesn't go together. That's what I thought. In reality, it's awesome. It's the best, right? Peanut butter and jelly, milk and cookies.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Scott Abbott, who shares his business wisdom. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Success isn't permanent and failure isn't fatal. So why do so many business owners ignore the 20% that could destroy them? Today's guest is Scott Abbott, an architect, builder, and a custodian of a strong, resilient company and a leader with over 30 years of experience launching, operating, buying, and selling businesses. He's raised millions in venture capital, led organizations that generated billions in sales, and he's the best-selling author of 4 books, including BOS-UP and BOS-UP Moments. Scott has built, sold, and coached hundreds of companies through the messiest parts of growth. And he's discovered something radical about harmony that contradicts everything you've been taught about balance. Spoiler alert, it involves cheddar and caramel popcorn, and it might just change how you think about running your business and your life. Let's meet Scott. Welcome to Richer Soul, Scott Abbott. It's great to have you join us today.
Rocky, thanks for having me. Appreciate you doing the show and allowing me to be with you today.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Well, I had an interesting upbringing. I currently reside in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I was born up in Fort Wayne. My dad worked for a company that once upon a time was pretty significant. He was an engineer, and he found himself being an engineer of businesses and helping to fix them. And he got a reputation for doing that. And so when I was a toddler, we moved and we kept moving. By the time I went to college, I had lived in 8 different locations, formative years, 6 in London, a year in Paris, and my last year of high school were in Madrid, Spain. And then I came back to the States and finished off up in Chicago at DePaul. And I say all that because my dad, as an engineer, a mechanic, very much into structure, systems, rules, protocol, tabulation, X's and O's, rows and columns, spreadsheets kind of a vibe. And man, he used to push my buttons on all of that numerator, denominator stuff. And I love him. He's my hero, but it actually pushed me away a little bit. At the same time, he was trying to pull me in, because I think I'm more of an entrepreneur. As time would tell, I've started a few companies and done some dumb things that in hindsight, I wish I didn't do. So growing up, great experience to help me learn and adapt. But he was very prominent on the importance of math and rigor and systems and engineering and mechanics. He was always a good steward with his money. But I also think I rebelled, Rocky. And that's why I did some dumb things in the dot-com era and spent way too much money. And looking back, woo, can't believe I did what I did. But so that's my story. Really unique, fun upbringing that absolutely was foundational to the good and the bad of what I ended up doing in life and professionally speaking.
What was that like as a kid living in all those different countries? Was there something that was kind of like an aha to you coming from America?
I think looking back, I just hit on it. I think it hardened me up and forced me to adapt and adopt, right? We moved a lot. I lived in various places. And even since college, I've bounced and bumped and been, highs and lows and goods and bads like most of us. So I would say in hindsight, being a bit of a clinician and looking at analytics and, enjoying filters and assessments, I see what it did. In the moment though, Rocky, right? That was my normal. I moved to London when I was 6 years old and moved back to the States when I was, going on 19. So for me, that was it.
London was normal.
Yeah, right. And that was the life we lived. And again, thanks to my mom and dad and my family, my brothers, my sister, we were very close and we got through it all. But that was, I don't know if it's that analogy or metaphor of the frog and the water, right? If it's, you throw it in when it's boiling, it's going to jump out. But if it's just hanging around swimming, maybe that's a correlation. I don't know.
No, it is. Mom in school, nothing about money.
Mom was mom. We weren't wealthy or anything. My dad was, had a gig. I didn't want and wasn't, but we also didn't. They didn't suffer fools on silly behavior with buying things that you shouldn't or spending money when you shouldn't. So I think stewardship and alignment and togetherness. Again, very blessed to have my parents in my life, and so yeah, I think indirectly, Rocky, but not directly.
Okay. You got out, you go to college. When did you start your first company?
In 1995, right at the advent of this little thing called the internet. As the joke goes, after Al Gore invented it, for all you youngsters, Google that or use your AI agent. Then me and my buddies at this little company by the name of IBM created a tidal wave of what we called e-business that then became e-commerce and what have you. So first company I started was in 1995 in my basement with a few $100 in my pocket. I saw something. I was always in tech before that. I was in systems implementation, industrial grade, software development, coding. So I started my career. What's so funny is I actually was in college to become a journalist, a broadcaster. And that's where I go back to the art and the science and the fusion of mechanics and biology, right? Back to pushing my dad away a little bit when I was younger. I fancied myself to be more of a, that side of the equation. You follow me? But I got a job offer from a tech company when I was just finishing off college, and that's where I went over to.
Nice. So you started the company. You raised a lot of money, right? $10 million.
Yeah. After a couple of years, we raised in total probably about 15 when you include venture capital and friends and family and debt. But I had the company for about 3 years before, the .com became a real big tidal wave, right? We didn't have a product per se. We were a services company that made .coms, if you will. And we put the internet into established enterprise companies like Harley Davidson and Procter and Gamble and Aon Insurance. And we went in and we basically created what was called, you remember, man, extranets and intranets. And we webified their legacy systems. That's what we did. And we had a good run. And back to my partnership with IBM. And so in what was it? A couple years before the year 2000, we raised a bunch of cash, bought a bunch of companies. As Warren Buffett said about the internet era, even a turkey can fly in a tornado. And I think he was thinking of me. I was one of those turkeys. And had some fun, did some really dumb things, nothing ventured, nothing gained. In hindsight, doing what I do now, man, wouldn't do it at all. But, can't change the past, let alone perfect it, right?
So I'm assuming you didn't walk out a billionaire.
No, quite the opposite. Very sincerely. In fact, not only that, but it really messed up my ego, my psyche. But I was very fortunate. I became kind of a too high profile of an entrepreneur. And then a small little $32 billion company brought me in to become an intrapreneur. And so credit to, they're still around, Avnet out of Phoenix. I was asked to come in. They were a supplier partner of mine when I had my internet company, and we had a blast. And I say this to a lot of quote unquote entrepreneurs, right? There's a new concept today called acquisition by entrepreneurship. And with all the dry powder and the wealth tsunami and everything else, if you're not smart enough like me to invent, I didn't invent the internet. I just took it and did stuff with it, right? Same thing with Avnet. So there's nothing wrong with working for another company and bringing in an entrepreneurial spirit and new systems and, a more modern way to build, run, and scale. You with me? I had a blast. In fact, I'd say the time I had there was as good. It was different. It was, steak to lobster kind of a vibe, but I had a blast being an intrapreneur and helping to build, run, and scale, new endeavors and initiatives inside of a big company as much as I did starting a brand new company.
You made a comment about the psychology, though, of that whole thing that happened, and it kind of messed you up. Did you just overcome that easily, or was that a struggle? Or
I overcame it. It's called family and responsibility and fiduciary requirements to pay my bills. Check your ego, right? So a host of reasons. But I gotta, we talked before we got a show about profit first. So Avnet's a publicly traded company, so I'm not gonna out them in any way, but 33 billion dollars, but they throw off about 8% profit. And it's a tough business. It's distribution, right? And so we were, banshees on profit. That's what really taught me the beauty of mechanics and process. And, today with BOS-UP business operating systems and our emphasis on modern, flexible infrastructure and technology, right? But really, and I'd worked with IBM and I'd done stuff with McKinsey and Accenture, but going to Avnet taught me the importance of efficiency and effectiveness, profit first, for example, right? And that was invaluable, man. I had a blast. I had a good time, enjoyed it. But really the influence to me was way more, Rocky, than my good times and screw ups in my startup, entrepreneur efforts and endeavors. You can learn a lot from the big companies that have been around a while. There's a lot of things you don't want to do that they do, right? And that's what we try to do today. My passion is to try to take the best of what the big guys do right and leave behind the silly stuff, the bureaucracy, right? The infighting, the red tape, and then take the energy of the, small startup companies and tuck in good systems and protocol, the things that they often kind of roll their eyes at and say, yeah, it's not Scrum. It's not Agile. I ain't doing it. Well, you got to pay bills too, right?
Somewhere in the middle. I've worked for large companies. There's a reason I work with small companies today. Things get done. And to say it nicely, well, I shouldn't say that because that's not true. Big companies got a whole lot of attitudes and things that prevent people or that prevent things from getting done right. They're all done for whatever reasons, and all that politics stuff just doesn't sit well with me. So
yeah, no, it's tough. As the famed German scholar Goethe said, it's hard to teach a man something new when he thinks his job depends on not knowing it.
Yes.
And that happens in big companies. It happens in politics. So I agree, man. And I think that's where I would say the world's evolving. I don't see as much of that, back to my dad in that era, right? That the world's changed. And I think a lot of it has to do with the cloud, both literally and metaphorically, COVID, Z's coming in, right? Gen Xers like me being more in charge of the world these days. It's the darn millennials that are messing everything up, Rocky.
You were talking about IBM, and if I remember correctly, I believe you wore a blue suit at IBM, not a brown one, not a gray one.
That's why they called it Big Blue, man.
Big Blue. They had very strict dress codes, very strict.
There's again, I just go back, in our world today, there's some concepts and some, Jim Collins, for example. Magic happens when the spirit of entrepreneurship meets a culture of discipline. Isidore Sharp, the founder of Four Seasons, systemize predictable to humanize the exceptional, right? I think like most things in life, it's an end both. And back to profit first and cash flow and income and silly things like thinking you're going to become a unicorn or, man, I think at the end of the day, the right thing is good harmony and both and finding that middle of the road vibe, both in terms of systems and purpose and passion and production. You with me?
I am. You said a word that I wanted to bring up because as I was looking through your stuff, it's something we've always talked about. For too long, people want balance, and there is no such thing as balance, but there is harmony. And that's what we talk about. Like, how do you create harmony in your life? Nothing's ever going to be balanced,
No.
but things can be good. And you just have to learn how to create that in a musical way for you because you, Scott, might want something totally different than me. And that's okay. As long as you're happy with yours and I'm happy with mine, who cares
Yeah,
how
I
it
think
goes?
the concept of work-life balance, and sorry, this isn't a plug, you just sparked me. So the
No.
new book just came out, BOS-UP Moments. We've got 40 moments that are around concepts, tools, and disciplines to be good. And guess what? Look what's in there, Mr. Rocky, harmony.
Yeah.
And if I may, you just said what you said, and I know I didn't get you a book. I'm going to get you one, but let me read what's in the book. Harmony. Everybody talks about having balance, but balance is a myth. It's static, rigid, and impossible to maintain in the real world. Instead of balance, what if we pursue harmony? Because harmony is about integration, rhythm, and flow. Harmony turns life and leadership into something sustainable, meaningful, and powerful. So yeah, I've got a bit of an advocacy going on, and that whole work-life balance, that word, it's like imagine being on a ball and a teeter. Harmony is like music, like a meal. Sometimes it's a little bit trebles up, bass is down. Sometimes you got a little more spice, and sometimes it's a little bit bland. I always remember there's a popcorn shop in Chicago called Garrett's. And when I first saw or heard about this mix of cheddar and caramel, I'm like, really? That doesn't go together. That's what I thought. In reality, it's awesome. It's the best, right? Peanut butter and jelly, milk and cookies. So yeah, big fan of the word harmony. Thanks for bringing that up.
No, we've been talking about that for years. I was almost going to accuse you of stealing it from me, but I
Hey
figured you
man, I'll
probably
put a
had
quarter in the
it.
till, and if you know anything about authoring books, I think I make about 17 cents a copy. Mr. Bezos makes all the money.
I
Checks in the mail,
understand.
Rocky. Checks in the mail.
So you had the company, you went to the other company, and then what?
Yeah, then let's go to the reality of big companies, right? And I don't want to go, if everybody remembers Jack Welch, GE, but every year you do some trimming, and even the best occasionally find themselves without the validation that what you're doing or what you should do as a company continues. So you got to right size and change. I mean, look what's going on with AI today in the workforce. That's a whole nother conversation, I'm sure. But
We'll
long
get to
story
it.
short, I was up for the presidency and didn't get it. And what happens in big companies, those that runner up usually end up going out. And so I came back home and I started basically what I do over the last 15 years. BOS-UP is basically a spinoff of Straticos. I became an independent coach, consultant, was working with prominent organizations, frameworks, and systems like EOS and scaling up, and just really had a fond admiration for those type of frameworks and anybody that could help small mid-market companies build, run, and scale. And then about 10 years ago with BOS-UP, I just said, hey, I think there might be a better way to do some things. And then specifically with the advent of AI. So I wrote the BOS-UP book and created what we now call the BOS-UP Coaching Solution Academy that helps coaches and companies build great organizations through a blend of, again, like we talked already, good frameworks, systems, process, all that kind of stuff, but also a real emphasis on humanization and how people coalesce and get along and just EQ, if you will, versus IQ. So we happen to think it's kind of a modern, flexible, accessible, and inclusive way to help small companies build, run, and scale and live good lives at the same time, right? Back to balance thing. There is no such thing. We want harmony.
No, that's very, very true. You have an acronym that you use, which kind of, I think, comes in here clear,
Yeah.
right? Collaborative, logical, empathetic, authentic, and resilient.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, they all sound wonderful.
Yeah.
And we're all going to do them and be lovey-dovey until there's no profit in the till.
Yeah.
And our checkbook says, hey, you got to make some tough choices. So what happens under stress with all of these? Like, which one is the one that tends to struggle the most?
Yeah. Well, I think this. You're a systems person, and I know your library behind you, right? So we prefer leading versus lagging indicators, key performance indicators that validate the lag and the OKRs, the objectives and key results. So clear is one of our We call them the essential concepts, tools, and disciplines to help you build, run, and scale. We believe in what we call the 9 core competencies. So Clear and BOS-UP is really a set of standards and principles that we use more so when you're having meetings with others, but even with yourself, that if you're planning, making decisions, achieving validation, trust but verify type of things, right? If you all agree to clear, which is the pursuit of the word, right? Let's be clear. Even Jack Nicholson, are we clear? Crystal, right? That kind of emphasis. And then it's an acronym. If you agree to be collaborative, logical, empathetic, authentic, and resilient, chances are your ability to get in and out, inputs and outputs are going to go up. So first things first, I'd say, ideally you want to avoid stress and strain because you have the right, Covey invented this term rocks, right? Your projects, programs, or initiatives you're going to do over the next 90 days, right? The things you should start or stop doing to be better. You're going to have good meetings that you pre-address, right? Most small businesses, they think the health of their company's in their balance sheet. They look to their checking account, to their general ledger. Well, the problem with that one is, and this, it's already too late. And so how do you overcome stress? Hopefully you have good systems and say, hey, let's make sure we know where the puck is going, to use a Gretzkyism. Let's make sure we have the right leading indicators and the right prognostics. But if indeed it does happen and things go bump in the night, look at COVID, look at the downside of tariffs, look at what's going on socioeconomically, right? This is where I go back to the soft side. How do you step up and have the right courage? How do you overcome anxiety? How do you set good boundaries with yourself and others, right? So that's the key. The key is to find the right structure and wherewithal for you, not just because a book says it or a consultant says it, right? Maybe you can leverage that, but ultimately it's got to be about you, not them, and find that groove between, hey, and then last but not least, back to, systems and structure. Be aware enough to know that, yeah, you've got to now make some decisions that aren't easy. You have to let go of people. Do you have to sell off product at a lower price? Do you have to modify and bite the bullet? And again, you've got to do that in a systemic way is my point. You just can't hope that it's going to happen or assume it's going to happen. You got to step up and own it.
You do. I find a lot of people won't. I find a lot of people are hesitant, afraid. I don't know. What's the right word? They tolerate stuff for way too long.
Yeah. For various reasons. Ego. They don't know what they don't know and they're uncomfortable. And that's where I just say, there's that old story about the kid saving the starfish that, rolled up on shore. The old man comes back and says, kid, you ain't going to save them all. He's like, well, I saved that one. I saved that one. So to your point, you're right, Rocky. You can lead a horse to water. You can't make it drink. Sadly, there's some people. Why doesn't everybody have coaching in their life? And I don't say that because I'm a coach, but I have coaches and I'm a coach. So why don't people mind their manners and eat their veggies and brush their teeth and wear their seatbelt, right? You with me? So humans are flawed. And that's why I think systems are so key. For me, I'm such a flawed human that without systems, I honestly, and I won't go into the details, I wouldn't be on planet Earth for various reasons, through struggles and through some dumb things I've done. If it wasn't for, back to my dad, when those times were tough, instead of hoping, assuming, wishing, sleeping, drinking, vicing into an answer, I said, no, I got to systemize into an answer. Counterintuitive to a lot of people. When things are hard, you need to actually, as Jocko Willink's famous for, right? Discipline equals freedom. And as the dude that just climbed the big tower, 120 stories, right? They ask him why. He goes, because it's hard. Do hard shit. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, why don't people do it? Because they're humans. And how to overcome it, they got to, it's hard to read the label from inside the box. So unless you have people in your world who can call BS, and that's, if you don't, that's why systems matter, because you look to that as the rigor, both the leverage and the constraints to do what you should or what you shouldn't be doing.
So you're a coach. What do you do when they don't listen or they don't take action on what they should take action on? They're always too busy or some excuse for why they can't get done what they should get done. And should's probably not a good word, right?
Well, I think I'm just going to say this, and I don't represent the coaching community, but ideally you have a philosophy that says coach you up or coach you out. And that's both for the company and you're ready for the coaches. So sooner or later, if that's pushback and it's pushing a wet noodle, I'm done. I say something that often I've got a lot of clients and work in the South, and you've heard this thing called Southern hospitality and this concept called bless your heart. Well, bless your heart's not really bless your heart. It basically is a different way of saying bite me.
Yeah.
And I think you're silly. But conflict's not one of their fortes, right? They have challenges with challenging. And so, you got to have some fun with it. Back to the clear. And, I have a lot of sessions where we actually have squishy toys to try to, overcome some of that anxiousness. But I truly believe coach you up or coach you out. And so we've got protocol, we've got tools, we've got games. I've got pop psychology and sociology to help people get over themselves and self-deception. But Rocky, you're absolutely right. Sooner or later, you just say, hey, Godspeed. I wish you all the best. Life's too short. I'm going to move on. And I know that's maybe not the answer you're looking for. I could also say, boss up, and we've got a lot of good concepts, tools, and disciplines to help you. See what I did there? But even then, one of my dad's favorite expressions always has been, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Now, that's for the owners. As far as the contributors go, the leaders, the mid-managers, the people that want to step up and step in, that goes back to, again, good systems and structure. You've got to establish that we do have, if you will, roles, accountabilities, responsibilities. As part of your employment, the deal we have for you getting paid and you doing what you're doing, you are going to get coached and you're going to enjoy it. And so even if you don't, tell your face that you do, right? I think you would agree, wouldn't you, man? When was the last time you did something for the first time that you didn't want to do and then you realized you not only liked it, but you're good at it?
Well, I don't know that I was good at it the first time, but I got good at it and then I liked it. It's funny. You don't like it until you get good at it. And then you're like, oh, now that I'm good at this, it's the same thing. When I work with business owners and they're not making money, they're tired, they just want to get to a place where they can get rid of their business. And you fix the business and you fix the systems and the processes. They're like, I think I like this business. We're going to keep it.
And that's okay. And one of our 9 core competencies is exit. It's not exit to sell per se. It's
Right.
Exit because you should be humble and a good human that says, what's my succession plan? If and when I wasn't here, right? I say this to a lot of business owners. You know what the easiest thing is that happens to a business owner, Rocky, that's got kind of this temperament you and I have, is they actually pass away. God willing, it doesn't happen, but they actually die and they go up to heaven because now they don't care and they move on. The worst is they get sick. They take on a vice, they get ulcers, they get strokes, and now they become a triple liability. You with me, man?
Yep.
So yeah, sometimes I got to play on that, thou art mortal and get over your self-deception. And I, I'm the challenger model. I'm a challenger coach. All my private, I coach a lot of alphas and high-powered and successful people. And usually my coaching starts with, hey, how you doing today, Rocky? You want a hug, a kick in the shorts, or a little bit of both? And I think that is the right answer if you are in a position of authority and vulnerability and everything else, right? You got to have those moments of candor and willingness to look in the mirror, not yell at the mirror. If that makes sense.
No, I totally understand that. You keep talking about systems. What I have found is when people look for solutions, they need convoluted, difficult, hard systems. Like you give them something as simple as profit first, they're like, oh, no, that will never work. That's too simple.
If we had a nickel. Yeah, right. And by the way, what's really hard is making things simple. And they don't get that, right? Until they get it. So when was the last time you did something the first time that now you're really good at? Yeah, simple ain't easy, man. What was the famous Abraham Lincoln? I said, you give me 7 hours to chop down a cherry tree, I'll spend 6 hours sharpening the axe.
Well, and they say the same thing about a speech. If I've got 2 hours to give a speech, no big deal. If you want it in 10 minutes, that's a problem because it's going to take me a long time to whittle it down to 10 minutes to get my message across.
Yeah.
And for me, I love simple elegance, but I just notice a lot of people struggle with it. And so the reason I'm bringing all these things up is because this is what I get pushback on. So I'm always looking for ways to solve it and to help people through a lot of those types of things.
Well, I think systems, and the reason I use it a lot is it's a word that's got a lot of entendre and perception and perspective, right? Give me a different word, arose by any other name, right? This is one of those situations. But I also want to emphasize my own personal story and what I've learned at 40 years of business now Systems are innately flawed, just like all the books on your shelf and everything we do. Why? Because it's inanimate. It was written in a way that doesn't know who you are. So first things first is respect that reality. You've got to make it what it is. It doesn't make you. Number two, I also think, if you really do want to embed it in the culture, it ultimately gets put into the floorboards, the HVAC, it's in the drywall, right? You got to give it a name. It gets a brand. It's your way. And sure, you give credit to frameworks like Profit First, BOS-UP, the other ones that are out there. But at the end of the day, you make or break it, right? There's, even with AI today, Rocky, there's tremendous job security. I mean, in fact, if anything, I'd say AI for the right places, the right people, and the right well-run companies, your job becomes as a human more valuable than ever. And that's counterintuitive to a lot of people. Sure, it's going to increase productivity. Sure, it's going to recalibrate the workforce and traditional employment, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, it ain't human. And even if it does, 20 years have robots and brain eating silly shit that happens, right? In the meantime, now more than ever, we need good humanization, and systems need to have that front and center. It's the in-between. It isn't the start and it isn't the finish. That's where humans come in.
And you have a quote, systematize the predictable to humanize the exceptional.
Yep. That's Isidore Sharp, founder of Four Seasons. When's the last time you've been to a crummy Four Seasons?
Well, these days...
I don't go to a lot of them. I'm just saying. I put you and me. I can't tell you last time. I think about 20 years ago. But you get the principle and you get the point.
Yes.
And I love the quote. Right? It does make sense. And this is the thing. Back to our friends who are the entrepreneurs, the kooky people, and you and I have both been those. It is counterintuitive. Just like discipline equals freedom. By the way, that was actually Bruce Lee, not Jocko. With all due respect to Jocko Willink, there's a great video of Bruce Lee and the other guy about 50 years ago where he said that. Discipline equals freedom. It was great. He just said it with such awesomeness. But yeah, man, it's counterintuitive. And I would go back to AI and systems and everything else. The more arduous you are, respectful and appreciative, you do it the right way, it liberates you to be a better human, to focus on what you want to do, be that product innovation, market, sales, culture. It really does. And back to your point about some owners, I see it a lot. A lot of owners say they want something, but they really don't. They live in the mess. They've been in the mess. That's their brand. That's their authority. That's their place. Let's just be honest, man. I'm not going to mention any names, but I've been doing this for a long time. And I'd say about 75% of the people that ultimately, even if they bring us in, they're still going, yeah, I like the mess. Okay. There's job security in that for them.
All right. So I'm not crazy.
Maybe un poquito, but not in this regard.
This episode of Richer Soul is sponsored by the Profit Answer Man podcast. If you're a business owner who wants to scale and grow, increase profits, or want to have strategic conversations around your financials, then check out the podcast. You'll learn how to work less, increase cash flow, increase profits, and build reserves to help you weather storms. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must-listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. You've been talking about AI. Let's dive in, because the adoption of AI has probably been one of the fastest adoptions. I will say I use AI every single day across a multitude of things that people might not even imagine. So like AI is my diet coach. AI helps me with my spreadsheets. AI has a big part of this podcast production. AI is a big part of our coaching calls. AI helps me create scripts, do that kind of work. It helps me notice things. But really, for me, it's a thought partner. It helps me to go faster. It helps me to think through things. It helps me to take my ADD thoughts and organize them. It gives me somebody to fight with that I can yell at without worry. I'm like, what did you, that's not at all what I told you to do. And yet here's the answer you sent me. And so
amen. Amen.
How are you using AI?
Same way, man. same way. So if you
Okay.
read my books, I've named my AI. It's Vector. I'm Builder. A lot of people don't know this. And I'd say Google me, like Kirk Cignetti famously said, the coach of the Hoosiers, when they hired him, when nobody knew who he was. And 2 years later, 16-0 national championship. Yes, go IU. But my last class in college, Rocky, 1989, I needed 5 more credits to get the heck out of Dodge at DePaul University. I took 2 classes, 2.5 credits for wine tasting and 2.5 credits for a little class on AI and machine learning. 1989. I was part of with my first company. You ever heard of this product by IBM called Watson? Remember Watson on Jeopardy?
Yes.
Yeah. So AI has been around for a few decades, my friend. And what happened, just like the internet was around for about a decade before the web browser came out, it was being used in government and universities. So ChatGPT basically did what happens in enterprise technology. It commercialized it, right? Typically, commercial goes into the enterprise like what happened with social media. In this case, the enterprise went out to the commercial because of ChatGPT. And to your point, 2 years later, I was in the .com era, man. I saw all that. And I would say people used to give me guff all the time about the prognostications. In hindsight, they were low, right? Everything's the internet today. You don't even use the word anymore, www. And with AI, it's the same thing. But I think you hit the nail on the head. There's a great book called, I don't like the title per se because I think it's scary, The AI-Driven Leader.
Yeah.
But if you really read the book, it's a book on leadership. It's a book on all the things we talk about, healthy accountability, structure, systems, keeping it in its right place, right? You lead, you don't let it lead. And you better have your thumbprint on it before it goes out, right? It's the in-between. That's where the efficiency, the productivity gains. Because I'm with you 100%. Your story on AI, because we've never talked before, is my story. And I treat it as my co-pilot, my ally. I've got coaches, but it's an assistant, man. But I'm going to come back and say, if you're not getting your head around it, and even back to my new book, we bring it in. I've got AI in all of it, right? And that's what I think differentiates us. Modern, flexible, inclusive is because, we kind of we're really producing the majority of our content materials over the last few years. So we love technology. We're taking it on versus some of the old school frameworks, right? They don't really like it because it's not their economic model or what have you. So yeah, if you're not embedding, infusing, and being integrated with AI, both personally and professionally, I don't know, man. Remember that book, Waiting for Godot? Godot never showed up. I think you're going to miss the boat.
I agree. What I've been told is AI is not going to replace your job, but somebody who knows how to use AI will.
Well, yeah.
And so
that's again,
the thing.
I find that to be a bit, that's heavy, but to the most part, if you're not at least recognizing and appreciating, just like the internet did, man, on supply chain and commerce and bricks and mortar versus clicks. And if you're not appreciating at least that, and I would just say back to our world, back to these concepts called rocks. We talk about roles, accountabilities, responsibilities. I will not let any of my clients or my coaches with my clients not literally insist that if you don't have AI, and I don't know exactly what it's going to do, how you're going to do it, where it's going to go, but typically we impress upon people that you should have 5 to 7 roles, accountabilities, responsibilities, right? You have a handful of KPIs that tie in OKRs. And today, Rocky, truly, if you don't have AI it's not even an expectation, it's an agreement-based commitment that you're doing something with it. No, then go find someplace else to go hang your hat and do what you're going to do. Because now you're not only being wrong, you're being now negligent. And ignorance is one thing, negligence is another.
You're also really inefficient because AI may not have the answer, but it'll help me get the answer 100x faster.
So I just built a new website with AI very intentionally. And I used to have a web development company. So been there, done that. And I spun up a site in about 3 days and back to what I do with AI, right? That's why, Vector loves and hates me. True story, though, I can actually show you. By the first iteration, we talk about Scrum and Agile and MVP. Kid you not, the version that's now online is the 164th version that I started with. This is where I get upset at people. When they use AI and they say good and they hit send and they use it. That's almost, in my opinion, that's grounds for firing, dismissal, even if it's yourself, right? If you just assume it's going to do X, Y, and Z and you ship, sorry, Seth Godin, I know you had that book, just ship it or whatever it was back in the day. You can't do that with AI, man. No way. You got to have policies now. And you got to have a policy with yourself that says, hey, it's an aggregator, it's an accentuator, it's an ally. I truly believe, I posted a video about a year ago that, what if you could have 50 more IQ points and be like Einstein and some of these other, you can't with AI. You just can't. Now, it doesn't mean that you could go paint the Mona Lisa or come up with, you follow me, man?
I totally follow you.
Well, I think you do, because you're the one who teed it all up with the way you do it. And I just said ditto.
Well, Jeff Woods,
you
were talking. Right. Jeff Woods was on the podcast back in episode 440. So we went deep into
You got it before he became really popular then a little bit, huh?
Oh, is he? He's even more popular now, huh?
Well, he's probably using AI. I'm just kidding. No, Jeff's again, but if you read the book, man, it's a book on leadership. He even says
I read the book and we talked. He helped me to think differently about how to use AI. And that's what really, he was one of the people who helped me shift how I use AI. We've done a lot of stuff with Mike Koenig, and Mike is showing me how to use multiple tools. So whereas I used to just use one AI, now I'm using multiple AIs and I'm taking stuff back and forth and across, and I can move pretty quick, and I'm getting better at it. So,
it's all kind of sandbox stuff right now. Let's be honest, right? So same thing with my group, right? We have Gronk and DeepSeek, and I actually did it because I didn't really want to do it. I've really kind of standardized on ChatGPT only really because I knew that was, given my learnings, my analytics, my analysis, I knew this would be the, I was going to say back in the day, the Netscape. Where's Netscape today? But you know where I'm going here, right? I knew it was going to be the prominent tool that most executives in business were going to use. So I said, hey, I'll kind of buddy up to that bar if you follow me, right? But yeah, absolutely. We've got, to your point, I mean, everything from Canva to our portal. We just translated our materials into Spanish, and we actually hired a company, but at the same time, we saved 3 weeks and probably X number of dollars because we did an end both. And that's kind of the thing at the end of the day. Like most things in life is an end both. And that's the whole sentiment you should always have with AI. You end it, never it alone.
I think ChatGPT's fallen behind, just like the browser wars. And it's only as of recent. 2 months ago, I probably wouldn't have said that. But the others took big steps forward just in the last weeks, that it's a constant shift. So you never know.
Yeah, but if I may, I'm going to get off the coach. I spent 40 years in systems and technology. And with all due respect to people maybe listening, right? If you go into your average company, no doubt there's better point solutions than a SAP or a Salesforce or an Oracle, right? But if you try to, take the latest and greatest widget and the guy that's got the new feature function and UX, UI, and that's what I'm trying to say. I got to be a bit of a pragmatist. I kind of have a line, neither a cynic nor an optimist be a positive pragmatist. So I'm just trying to rationalize why I chose ChatGPT, knowing that what you just said was going to happen. Iterations. In fact, 2 versions ago, I hated it, man. I was ready to throw the baby out the bathwater. But I said, no, I'm going to hang in there. I mean, the graphics, I don't want to get into a hardcore.
No.
But I live in the world. I spend probably 35% of my life in both using, studying, analysis, design, implementation. But maybe another show for another time when you want to pull out our propeller hats and go a little techie geeky. But right now, it's, to your point, it's an ally, it's a co-pilot, it's an assistant. And for the most of us who aren't building airplanes and running ships, in the sky, right? That's the way we need to look at it. It's an efficiency, productivity optimizer, but always be the one to ensure that your touch validates whatever gets sent out into the universe.
And so whatever comes out of AI needs to be polished. And that's the human part of it. It's just the reality. It will help you move faster in the middle. And I still use ChatGPT for a lot of stuff. I use other tools now, and I've just broadened my base. That's all. And 6 months from now, it'll change again.
100%.
And that's okay.
That's the reality with all the money going in, right? The equity market.
It is.
Love this, like the .com era. One of my moments is 10-80-10, and it's a play off of the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. And I believe this is really because of AI. But imagine you're a business owner today, and this is what most business owners do. They spend 85 to 90% of their life, if not more, in the business versus on. They're doing the production, they're doing the shipping, they're doing the inventory. And I mean metaphorical, if not literal. Imagine if 80% was actually in the first 10%, the innovation, the business development, the marketing, the shaking hands, rubbing elbows, kissing babies. You with me? And then other 40% of the 80% is in the back end, saying thank you, please, may I have another, coaching up your people, mentoring, building the culture. And that 80% in the middle is because you got a good team, good systems, and this is where AI is blossoming. So, it's one of our moments, and I push buttons on 10-80-10, man. And you almost got to plant that flag, Rocky, to your point, and even back to the technology says, that's the flag I'm planting. How I'm going to get there, I don't really know yet. But, you don't result in results, right? You process and step and move. And I think that's where people got to get more comfortable with AI today is don't do anything stupid. Don't make any dumb mistakes. Just try to get your head around, how to get to the next level.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let's kind of get back to the business side. When we deal with all of these issues, we deal with conflicts, right? We've got to have resilience. What have you found in those particular areas? Because I'm sure there's a lot about that in that book.
Well, I kind of go back to, we believe back to, I think businesses are like a brick home. Bricks are the content, the what, right? The products, the systems, the materials, the supplies, the tangible. Mortar is the contextual, the nuance, the touch, the feel, the taste, the tone. And then ultimately you have inside, the humans, the furnishings, the food, and the ambiance. And so I think today, when it comes to businesses and back to conflict and challenging, and look at the country and the world today, right? We got a lot of, unfortunately, dysfunction and finger pointing and he said, she said, and various sides of the streets, right? But again, I'm going to go back to concepts, tools, and disciplines. If you embrace a concept, for example, right? Here's a favorite one when it comes to people dealing with conflict and getting frustrated. Back to clear, right? If you are logical, empathetic, authentic, and resilient, which means being anti-fragile. So start there, not to overplug my clear, trademark, by the way. So if you use it, you got to ship me 5 cents. But seriously, one of them that I just think you got to pause and say, listen, right? We measure ourselves by our intentions, but we measure others by their actions. And just let that sit with you for a moment, right? And so when people get anxious, and one of my moments in the book is safe. What's a word that's way too overused over the last couple of years? Safe. I don't feel safe. Is this safe, right? And if you remember the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Aslan, right, who represents God, one of the famous lines is he safe? They say, no, he's not safe, but he's good. A lot of things can happen by going through the quote unquote danger zone. A lot of things can happen by going through tension, right? Without tension, buildings don't stand, planes don't fly, we don't exist. So you got to kind of check your ego, your paradigm, your paradox. And there's fun little, again, concepts, tools, and disciplines that when used right in the right way, right to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But that's why your best tradespeople have a tool belt. They got the right tools, right? And they got probably 8 or 15 that when they walk on site, on average, 80% of what they need to do can get done, right? And that's what we believe in. If you've got, back to moments, it's really about these kind of moments that you have inflection where people are frustrated, they're afraid, they're anxious, they don't want to set good boundaries, they don't understand that relationships need agreement-based commitments, right? But at the same time, you can't overwhelm them. So I just settle on, what do? You have a handful of intelligent, practical, proven concepts, tools, and disciplines, and you and your leadership team agree to those. Back to, you agree to this system, you agree to these ground rules, you agree to these values, right? And if you just do that, that goes back to the 80-20 rule. 80% of your life is going to be good, and the 20% that's not, then deal with it in that moment and take care of it versus letting it metastasize and screw you up because people aren't, dealing with the goofy things that they need to deal with. I know, easier said than done, but that's Dr. Abbott's, I can't physically do it for you. So that's the next best thing.
No, I just find that it takes a lot to get people over the hump to make the commitment to do it. And once they do, then they're like, oh, wow, I should have done this before. And we're like, yeah, duh, we said so. But
that's why, we believe in this concept of compartmentalization, right? And so leadership isn't management. Management isn't leadership. And then that's why you need accountability and teamwork. Ideally, and I go back to the, again, sorry for the plug, but BOS-UP is the solution to build, run, and scale great companies leveraging business operating systems, AI, and coaching. It's not because I'm advocating that you got to hire a coach. You should think like one. But what's a good coach do? Just the same thing we've talked about today, right? Kind of pushes you in a good way, tells you to get out of your own way, and sticks a mirror in front of your face, and mentors and develops and nurtures. And I'm going to go back to my IU Hoosiers, right? Kurt Signetti, he's more of a CEO than he is a coach because he's got good people around him. He believes in a system. He believes in values. He believes in, what it takes to build, run, and scale a great team. And, he's obviously got some experience, but let's just be honest. He had and does have a phenomenal system. And if I'm pretty enamored with my Hoosiers, I'm not going to lie, but check it out. It's a nice, connective tissue, if you will, to what people need to do in business and in life.
No, I get that.
But no, it's not easy, man. And again, I go back to the 10-80-10. If you can figure out, thanks to AI and good systems, and that owner can spend more time than typical, unless, of course, back to what we talked about a while ago. Here's the reality, man. I've been doing this for 40 years. I would say 8 out of 10 entrepreneurs historically aren't actually good people. You get this mythic, romanticized movie version of entrepreneurs that they're charismatic and they're outgoing and people are following them because they're like the wizard of what have you. I would say that most of them are wicked introverts. They struggle with self-deception. You follow me? They got problems and they decide to start a company because they don't actually like working with or for other people. I'm just being honest. Now, that's not for everybody. And I would just say that's to your point why, there's no such thing as absolutes. And, sometimes you got to walk away and say, hey, I can't help you because you're past the point of any, I believe in redemption, but there's a line where you got to say, hey, it's just not worth your scratch or theirs. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, you just got to do your best. And let's be back to job security, back to this concept of 90 and rocks. If you get 90% of your goals, your attributions, your pursuits, your hopes, your dreams, your wishes, your tangible imperatives, if you get 90% done and good, that's great, man. Right? There's no such thing as perfection. I mean, I hope we have perfection in airplanes and elevators and on operating room tables. You with me? But 85, 90% consistent, good, and done, whew, that's pretty awesome. And that's where I also get a lot of owners who get upset because that last 10%, because people are your systems, they want perfection. Like, no, man, it just don't work that way.
It does not. And I'm with you. As a matter of fact, if you can get 75% out of people of what you would do, I think that's good enough.
And again, what a lot of people don't know is that if you and I say that out of context, back to, again, airplanes and operating room tables, but you can't say it out of context. That's one of the problems with our country and the world right now, right? People are getting through social media and legacy media, these soundbite bumper sticker dimensions, and that's fact. No, it's not fact. That's why I go back to clear, right? Is that logic? Is that emotion? Is it, can it stand the stress test? You with me, man? And that's where I think back to 80, 90%, that counterintuitive, that 10% that's not there, spend more time in that then. In our weekly team meetings, a lot of people freak out because we advocate 60 minutes every week of talking about issues being good and bad. My God, that's a lot. And in fact, what we don't talk about is all the things that are actually working. Why talk about that? Just report on it. Green light, green light, green light, yellow, red, let's talk about, right? But why talk about things that you don't need to talk about and deal with things? Because people tend not to like the tough stuff. They don't want to go to the danger zone. They don't want to deal with the boogeyman in the room and the yuckies. You with me? But good stewardship, good leaders, they have to, that's their job. That's their responsibility. And that's where I think AI and good systems come in, is it overcomes and helps people, modify their shortcomings in ways that if it was just on their own, they couldn't.
And I'm with you on all of that. Is there anything we should have touched on that we didn't get a chance to?
Besides me being silly and saying, how about those Hoosiers? Now that the season's over, I can't say that anymore. Back to your world. And if I may, back to your world, and not to overplug you, because that's not what I know your heart and purpose is, but back to profit first and back to economics. You know this better than me. I've been an advocate for that philosophy and framework for a long time. And that's the biggest thing I think, hopefully, we both want to do these days is we do need profit. We do need production. but we also need purpose. We need systems. We need soul. We need head. We need heart. And so that's my big motivator today, man, is this end goals. And I'm all due respect to past frameworks and systems and technology that tends to be rigid and one-sided and kind of franchise-like, right? You don't go to McDonald's to get a great steak and eggs and pina colada with, a side of sushi, right? And so I just think the importance of harmony and the harmonization around good systems, the right use of AI, back to Jeff Woods. Let's both give him a little pat in the back and kudos, because I think he came out with a great book, again, mostly on leadership and how to leverage AI, not on the technical merits of it all. And that's the biggest thing. We've talked about it, but I just would sum up and say that's the real. And it's not easy, man. It's just like making things simple. It ain't easy. And I often joke and wink and say, well, there's job security in that for you business owners. It's all automated. It's all easy. What do we need you for?
There is that. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's one truth about success you wish more people understood?
Well, I can't take credit for this. I've got one of these memories that remembers innocuous, silly things, and I'll forget my own birthday, let alone my own family, more importantly, other people's birthdays. But I don't know who said it, but I've always loved this. Success isn't permanent and failure isn't fatal. And so I think if you're not growing, you're dying. Even if you're having phenomenal days, you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. I'm going to go back to systems. I've seen success cover a lot of sins. I've helped a lot of startups that raised a lot of money. I was one of those guys. I went from making money to losing $500,000 a freaking month, man, right before I knew it. So back to success. Embrace the good. Life should have joy. The destination is the journey. I got a whole bunch of these for you, but keep it in good perspective. Stay humble, stay confident, achieve and strive for success, but make sure that your success is based on certainly monetary, because without monetary, you can't pay for a lot of things you need in life, but just find that harmony to ensure that your definition correlates with ideally what's best for you and yours. And back to reality, just keep it real, especially for some of the startups and small entrepreneurial companies. Don't go seeking unicorn status, go seeking free cash flow. Go seeking stability, going concern versus concern going, if you know what I mean. So that'd be my answer on that one.
And it's true. If you build for cash, the rest will come. It's just the reality of it, because it means that people want what you have to sell and you can make a profit doing it. What's one truth about entrepreneurship that most people only learn after they have enough money?
Well, I go back to my upbringing and mechanics and just trying to keep things simple. And, I actually have a whole talk on biomechanics, right? The biology and the physiology along with mechanics. That's where the magic is. But I really think at the end of the day, it's this fusion of realization and respecting that we need systems, we need protocol, we need alignment. And, without that, entrepreneurs can't be what they want to be. And I think counterintuitive to a lot of them, they just got this, let's go do it like Nike. No, that can get you in a lot of trouble. So just being mindful of be quick, but don't hurry, and respect that while you might have a product or a service or some real big passion, you got a company run and you have fiduciary governance that you got to be in charge of.
Yeah, delivering your passion is different than running a company. Two separate skill sets, two separate things. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Again, I'm going to come back to duality. Have fun. You're young. You're learning. Go for it. But do so with respect and appreciation for, try not to get into too much trouble. and I grew up overseas, right? And overseas, I can tell you, success, back to that word, isn't really enamored or measured by monetary. It's wisdom. And when you look at wonderful, especially in Europe and the Far East, right? Age, wisdom, when people sit at the dinner table listening, I don't want to say listen to your elders, right? Because there's a lot of knucklehead elders who I don't want to listen to. But just, again, I wrote a book, by the way, sorry for the plug, called Level Up to Pro. That's for 18 to 25-year-olds entering in the workforce. It's around career-centric life skills. And I'm going to say it was my first book on systems, but I don't know if I really use that word because I didn't want to scare anybody, right? But just again, embracing the fact that while mistakes will happen, you need to have them, right? Try not to, you don't need to romanticize it. I see that happen quite a bit too, right? So be careful, have fun, but ideally you're intentional. And even if you don't know where you want to go, right? This isn't Alice in Wonderland. Any road will get you there. Try to be as definitive and aligned as best you can, and just, give yourself both grace and grit. It's one of my favorite, suggestions even to my clients, but, and then back to being on your podcast. Seriously, I think what you and I do, if I could speak on behalf of both outside of the economic model, right? We've all heard that expression. What if I knew then what I know now? Well, you can't change the past, let alone perfect it. But what if you could leverage other people's hindsight? That becomes your insight, and you get to use it as foresight. Again, to not make any mistakes, but to just try to get there a little bit more intelligent and safer and smarter. And maybe that's the older guy in me, but I did a lot of rebellious, dumb things in my early years. And, I don't think you can stop that in humans. Just be, try to be more intentional and planned about things while you're enjoying them. That's my advice.
All I know is people who climb the highest mountains have Sherpas. Because without them, they drop dead.
Amen, brother. And
and that's what we're here to be.
They got great put together backpacks, and they got the right equipment. And to your point about mountains, right? Mountain climbers actually, when they map out their mountain, they start at the top and go down. They don't start at the bottom and go up, right? And so that way you can see what you're seeing versus you can't see when you're looking up at the top of the mountain, right? So there's a lot of analogous things here. So absolutely, man. Love that one.
If people would like to learn more about BOS-UP, how do they find you in the program?
Yeah. So on a personal level, because it's not all business for me, I'm kind of I love to share, again, irrespective of, let's just be honest, the economics. So Scott Abbott, ABC. ABC stands for Architect, Builder, Custodian. It's one of my mantras that I hope other owners and leaders can embrace, be an architect, builder, custodian of leadership, business, life. So Scott Abbott, ABC on all the interwebs, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, and .com, scottabbottabc.com. BOS-UP, same, BOS-UP.coach. If you're an independent business consultant, coach, somebody out there who thinks you'd like to add a little more impact and income to your world, that's what we do. And then for those companies that want to boss up, same website, just click in some different areas, and we've got books and materials and resources. And then last but not least, books are all on this little entity, Mr. Bezos, I guess, started back in the day, called Amazon. So just go put BOS-UP or BOS-UP Moments in Amazon, and that's where you can find that.
Absolutely awesome. And we'll put it in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Rocky, thanks, man. Appreciate you. Happy New Year. Even though that Seinfeld episode, can we still say Happy New Year? The 10th of February.
Way past that.
Let's have a great year. How about that? And
there you go.
But seriously, thank you for what you do in the show. Long-time listener, first-time caller, as the expression goes. Glad I was here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Scott and I talked about frameworks and truths about business and life that most entrepreneurs only learn after losing everything. From the importance of harmony over balance to understanding why systems actually set you free. They do so in every single part of life. We've got to embrace AI as our co-pilot rather than as our replacement, because people still have to do things. I hope it was helpful and actionable for you. If you know someone else who could benefit, do us both a favor, share it with them. I appreciate that. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.